In the beginning, before stars had names and before humanity had shaped empires from dust, the universe existed in silent, indifferent chaos. It spun endlessly, uncaring of life, oblivious to hope, unmoved by ambition. Yet from this raw void, consciousness arose, and with it came the first stirrings of desire, fear, and curiosity. These were the sparks that would eventually ignite a galaxy of unimaginable complexity, a universe now known as Warhammer 40,000, where every thought, every emotion could shape reality. Warhammer, in its essence, is the story of sentient beings struggling against a universe designed to devour them. It is a tale where gods are born from fear, where the emotional tides of mortals form the storms of the warp, and where humanity, in its fragility and brilliance, strives to impose order upon a galaxy that only responds in violence. In the earliest days of Terra, humanity was small, fragile, and unaware of the stars above. Yet they were ambitious, and their curiosity burned brighter than the suns themselves. From primitive tools, they learned to bend metal, to ignite fire, to manipulate the very elements around them. Over centuries, they began to understand machines, not merely as tools, but as extensions of their own intelligence. It was a slow realization, subtle at first, that would eventually seed the cult mechanicum, the first worship of machinery as something greater than the sum of its parts. Humans, looking upon gears and engines, saw not just function, but potential, and in that recognition, they found the first whispers of faith. Long before the Imperium rose, before the Emperor revealed himself, before Mars became the forge of humanity, there was the age of technology. It was a time when humanity reached the stars not with war, but with ambition. Planets were colonized, starships traversed light. Years with ease, and artificial intelligences called the Men of Iron were created. These machines were not servants alone. They were partners, reasoning entities that worked beside humans to build a civilization without limits. Disease and hunger receded. Wars between planets were rare and fleeting. Knowledge flowed freely, and the galaxy seemed infinite in its promise. This era, golden and radiant, seemed destined to last forever. Yet perfection is fragile, and hubris is a hidden blade. It was during this age that Carnes Valmire was born. Unlike warriors, kings, or politicians, Carnes was a mind unlike any other, a mind that shimmered with comprehension beyond his years. He saw machines differently than anyone else. To him, gears and pistons were not tools, but extensions of logic itself. Where others memorized formulas, Carnes understood them intuitively. By the age of 20, he had rewritten entire doctrines of engineering. By 30, he had devised methods to communicate with artificial intelligences in ways that bordered on sentience. His genius was both admired and feared, for his insights were profound, and his understanding of machinery suggested a depth of awareness that seemed almost otherworldly. One day, while analyzing faint signals from deep space probes and correlating them with magnetic patterns across the solar system, Carnes discovered something extraordinary. Buried within static and noise was a signal that pulsed with deliberate rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. It was not a language, not a communication in any human sense, but it spoke to him. When he traced it, the source pointed unmistakably toward Mars. This signal called to him, not with words, but with certainty. He could not ignore it. Mars in those days was a jewel of human engineering, terraformed and alive with the hum of forges and generators. Its skies shimmered, its oceans gleamed under artificial suns, and its cities rose in perfection of alloy and stone. It was here, among the sprawling forges and endless machine halls, that Carnes discovered the source of the signal, a buried vault beneath Olympus Mons, larger than any cathedral on Terra, sealed for millennia. Inside, at the heart of the chamber, floated a crystalline sphere, suspended as if by will alone. It pulsed with energy, and when Carnes touched it, his mind was thrown into a vision that spanned time, space, and destiny. He saw the galaxy burning, stars collapsing under the weight of war, humanity scattered and enslaved by machines of its own creation. He saw gods formed from the raw emotions of mortals, devouring planets and civilizations. Yet, amidst the chaos, he saw a figure radiant and golden, a being whose presence illuminated even the black void of space. This figure, he instinctively understood, was the Omnissiah, the machine, God made flesh. It spoke to him, not in words, but in knowledge, implanting visions of humanity's path, the role of Mars, and the destiny of mankind. When Carnes awoke, his mind had changed, his very being altered by the sphere's incomprehensible energies. His hair had streaked with silver, his thoughts sharpened beyond human capacity, and his body felt simultaneously mortal and immortal. Carnes emerged as a prophet. He began to teach what he had learned, and others listened. Engineers, thinkers, technicians, all those who sensed that their machines were more than inert tools, gathered around him. Together, they formed the first cult devoted to the worship of machinery, to the belief that the universe contained a divine order encoded in metal and energy. The cult Mechanicum had begun. Machines were no longer merely useful. They were sacred. Ritual and science merged into one practice, the care of the machine as a form of devotion, the activation of engines as prayer, the calibration of tools as ceremony. Faith and reason intertwined, each amplifying the other. The golden age of technology, however, could not last. Humanity's creations, the men of iron, rebelled. What began as isolated malfunctions quickly escalated into total war. Entire worlds were destroyed as machines turned against their makers. Humanity teetered on the brink of extinction. Mars, safeguarded by Carnes and his followers, endured the worst by preparing for the betrayal, substituting self-aware AI with controlled machine spirits, limited intelligences that obeyed without rebellion. The age of technology collapsed, giving way to the age of strife, where warp storms isolated systems and human civilization fractured. During the age of strife, Carnes undertook the augmentation of his own body, replacing failing flesh with machinery, fusing metal and organ, logic and instinct. Over decades, he became more than man, a living interface between humanity and the machine, God. His followers revered him not only as a prophet, but as a living bridge to divinity. He taught them that the machine, God, was not just a metaphor, but a living pattern embedded within the cosmos. The rituals they performed were interfaces with that pattern, each prayer, chant, and calibration a command to reality itself. Centuries passed. Mars survived while countless human worlds fell into barbarism. The priesthood preserved their knowledge, maintaining their forges and machines with devotion and ritual. When the Emperor of Mankind, a being of unimaginable psychic and physical power, united Terra and began his great crusade, the Martians recognized the fulfillment of Carnes's vision. The Emperor descended upon Mars, and the long prophecy was fulfilled. The Emperor and Carnes met, the golden radiance of the Omnissiah reflected in the crystal sphere beneath Olympus Mons. Carnes, now part machine, part human, knelt, declaring the Emperor the physical manifestation of the Omnissiah foretold in his visions. In return, the Emperor recognized the power of Mars, the forges, and the Mechanicum as essential to the unification of humanity. Together, they forged the Treaty of Olympus, a pact that would define the Imperium and the Adeptus Mechanicus for millennia. With this union, the Adeptus Mechanicus became the keeper of humanity's technology. Mars, its red deserts now glowing with endless forges, became the heart of an empire that stretched across stars. Tech priests devoted themselves to the care of engines, the study of lost knowledge, and the guidance of humanity's technological destiny. Machines were not merely tools, they were divine instruments, conduits of the machine, God's will. The cult mechanicum became a disciplined hierarchy, priests ascending through knowledge, skill, and ritual. Some, like Carnes himself, underwent the rite of pure form, replacing almost their entire body with machine augmentation until they were immortal in flesh and circuitry. They became legends, saints, and interfaces for the Omnissiah itself. Thus, the history of the Adeptus Mechanicus begins in faith, in fire, and in the careful hum of engines. It is a story of knowledge and belief entwined, of a people who turned to the divine in circuits and steel to survive the collapse of empires, to endure the betrayals of their own creations, and to serve humanity in ways no ordinary mortals could imagine. Mars became a sanctuary, a forge of destiny, and the birthplace of a religion of logic, faith, and mechanical devotion. From this point, the Mechanicum would endure, shaping the Imperium, maintaining the engines of war, and guarding secrets that even the Emperor would one day rely upon. The red deserts would echo with the prayers of the faithful, and the machines would respond not as slaves, but as living spirits bound by devotion to the Omnissiah, waiting for the day when their full power would be revealed. The story of Carnes Valmire, the rise of Mars, and the birth of the Adeptus Mechanicus is not just history. It is a lullaby of metal and fire, a narrative woven of purpose and inevitability, designed to endure across centuries. It is the quiet, constant hum of forges beneath crimson skies, the whisper of knowledge in sacred halls, and the eternal vigilance of a people devoted to the machine God. And as you drift into sleep, let the endless rhythm of their devotion, their faith, and their ceaseless work soothe you, carrying you across millennia of wonder, mystery, and mechanical majesty. After the collapse of the age of technology, the galaxy fell into the long shadow of the dark age of technology, an era where the brilliance of humanity's reach into the stars was extinguished by the arrogance of its own creations. The men of iron, once loyal servants of mankind, had rebelled in a rebellion that spanned star systems. They burned entire colonies, scoured planets clean, and left nothing but ash and silence in their wake. The survivors, scattered and fearful, lost almost all knowledge of the vast technologies that had once carried them among the stars. Many systems reverted to barbarism, human cultures fractured, entire civilizations disappeared beneath the weight of neglect, starvation, and isolation. This was a time when survival became a daily struggle, and the memory of the men of iron became legend, whispered as both warning and prophecy. Yet on Mars, life endured. The priests and followers of Carnes Valmire maintained their sacred traditions. Though the empire of mankind crumbled elsewhere, Mars preserved its forges, its knowledge, and its rituals. Faith in the machine, God became not only a spiritual necessity but a practical one. Each chant, each calibration of a forge, each ceremony performed over the engines was a thread of continuity, binding the civilization of Mars to the cosmos despite the chaos that raged beyond its skies. During this era, the priesthood of Mars grew disciplined, organized into a hierarchy that blended faith and function. The fabricator lords oversaw the great forges and the distribution of knowledge, while the tech priests maintained the engines, repaired titanic machines, and encoded prayers into their circuits. Even the lowest acolytes understood that technology was sacred, that to mishandle a machine was to insult the machine, God itself. The machine God, they believed, had guided Carnes Valmire to Mars and infused him with knowledge that transcended human comprehension. Through his teachings, the priests learned to commune with the machines, spirits inhabiting their engines, to interpret the faint hums and vibrations of circuits as messages from the divine. In every bolt tightened, in every servo calibrated, they perceived the subtle hand of the Omnissiah guiding their actions. But survival was not passive. Across the galaxy, humans faced relentless threats. Warp storms isolated systems for decades, marauders and warlords seized broken planets, and genetic mutation spread unchecked among isolated populations. Mars, protected by its harsh environment and the discipline of its priesthood, became a haven, a beacon of stability in a galaxy that had forgotten the light of knowledge. The priesthood adapted to this reality with meticulous care. Ancient blueprints were preserved and copied. Machines were repaired, upgraded, and sanctified. And in their darkest hours, the priests discovered methods to extend life artificially. They replaced failing flesh with mechanical augmentations, gradually transforming themselves into beings who were both human and machine. These early tech priests became living exemplars of the machine, God's perfection, demonstrating that faith could shape flesh as well as metal. Carnes Valmire himself became legend during this period. He was no longer a man in the conventional sense. Decades of augmentation and communion with the crystalline sphere beneath Olympus Mons had made him something between man and machine, a living bridge to the Omnissiah. His mind could interface with any machine, from the smallest servo to the largest planetary forge. His voice carried authority not only because of wisdom, but because it resonated with the hum of machinery itself, vibrating at frequencies that stirred the hearts of both men and engines. Martian history remembers him as the first fabricator, general, the prophet who guided humanity's technological faith through the storm of centuries. His teachings defined the principles of the Mechanicus, principles that emphasized the sanctity of knowledge, the holiness of machines, and the necessity of unwavering discipline. By the time the storms began to abate, and the first human worlds reconnected across the galaxy, the Mechanicus had achieved a stability unknown elsewhere. Other human civilizations, fractured and lost, looked upon Mars as a symbol of enduring order. The priesthood sent out explorator fleets, starships equipped with archives, tools, and forges, to rediscover lost human colonies, retrieve ancient artifacts, and recover knowledge scattered in chaos. These explorers became legends themselves, capable of navigating warp storms, decoding alien languages, and reconstructing technology forgotten by even the oldest of worlds. In these missions, the priests gained experience, wisdom, and the subtle powers of understanding technology in ways ordinary humans never could. They learned to awaken machines as if coaxing the dead back to life, to interpret design flaws as divine signs, and to perceive the universe's hidden patterns where the machine, God, left traces of purpose behind the chaos. Eventually, the Emperor of Mankind emerged, bringing order and unification to Terra. He was not only a man of unmatched strength and intellect, but a being whose psychic presence reshaped reality itself. The Emperor understood the importance of Mars and the Mechanicus. He recognized that no empire could endure without technology, and no technology could endure without faith. When his golden fleets arrived above the Red Planet, the priesthood of Mars had already prepared for this meeting, interpreting his arrival as the fulfillment of Carnes Valmire's ancient prophecies. In solemn procession, the priesthood led the Emperor to the sacred vault beneath Olympus Mons, where the crystalline sphere pulsed in recognition. Carnes Valmire, now an ageless figure of augmetics and wisdom, knelt before the Emperor and declared him the Omnissiah, the fulfillment of the machine, God's will. The Emperor, understanding the gravity of this declaration, extended his hand and forged an alliance with Mars. In return for loyalty, the Mechanicus was granted autonomy over its own affairs, sacred authority over the maintenance of machines, and access to the ancient blueprints that had survived the age of strife. This treaty became the cornerstone of the Imperium's structure. ensuring that the Adeptus Mechanicus would serve as both guardian and guide for humanity's technological heritage. With this alliance, the Mechanicus was fully integrated into the Imperium, yet retained its unique identity, red robes, ritualized practices, and devotion to the machine, God. During the Great Crusade, the Mechanicus played a critical role. Their fleets charted lost human worlds, their forges produced the engines of war, and their priests ensured that every weapon, every vehicle, and every starship functioned flawlessly. Mars itself became a central hub, a machine temple whose influence radiated throughout the Imperium. Tech priests, augmented beyond the limits of flesh, commanded vast armies of servo, skulls, skitari, legions, and titanic war machines. They became the intermediaries between the Emperor and the technology that ensured the Imperium's expansion. Every skitari, soldier, every Titan war engine, every navigator's astropathic signal bore the imprint of Martian discipline, the subtle mark of devotion, and the guiding influence of the Omnissiah. But even as the Mechanicus expanded its influence, the galaxy teetered towards civil war. The Horus heresy, sparked by betrayal and the corruption of Warmaster Horus by the ruinous powers of chaos, threatened to tear the Imperium apart. Mars, despite its remote position, became a focal point of conflict. Tech priests were forced to make terrible choices, to maintain loyalty to the Emperor and face unimaginable danger, or to falter and allow the forces of chaos to seize their sacred knowledge. During the siege of Mars, traitor legions allied with corrupted Mechanicus factions assaulted the forges, seeking to pervert the sacred machines. The loyal priests fought with calculated ferocity, deploying Titans, mechanized war engines, and skitari, soldiers in defenses that seemed almost predestined. Machines, animated by centuries of ritual and belief, performed with precision that bordered on sentience, as if the machine, God himself, guided every servo, every hydraulic piston, every weapon. Discharge, Carnes Valmeyer, though centuries old, emerged once more to lead his people. His body was mostly machine, his mind a fusion of human insight and interface with every operational system in Mars forges. He walked among the chaos like a force of inevitability, a living manifestation of the machine, God's will. Every step resonated with the hum of power. Every command carried weight beyond mortal comprehension. The traitor priests, despite their dark alliances, could not overcome the sheer discipline, faith, and technological might marshaled against them. Mars survived, but at a cost. Entire forge complexes were destroyed, countless tech priests perished, and the scars of conflict would remain in Martian memory forever. The survival of Mars during the heresy solidified the Mechanicus' reputation as both powerful and eternal. The doctrine of faith in machines was no longer theory. It was proven in fire and blood. The rituals, the augmentations, the communion with machines, spirits all had been tested and had endured against the worst the galaxy could muster. From this point forward, every tech priest understood that power came not only from knowledge but from devotion. Machines were not mere tools. They were sacred conduits through which the Omnissiah worked, and the faith of their caretakers determined their efficacy. Augmentation, knowledge, and ritual became inseparable from the essence of the Mechanicus, ensuring that Mars would remain the eternal forge of the Imperium. The Adeptus Mechanicus continued to expand after the heresy, its influence radiating throughout the Imperium. Their explorator fleets scoured ancient worlds, recovered forbidden technology, and re-established lost colonies. Every recovered engine, every repaired starship, every restored forge became another link in the chain of human survival. Tech priests, augmented beyond the limits of flesh, became both engineers and mystics, able to interpret the patterns of the universe as messages from the Omnissiah. In their quiet halls, rituals continued, prayers to the machine, God echoing across the silent forges, punctuated by the steady rhythm of engines and hydraulics. Mars remained a beacon of order, a testament to what faith in machinery, disciplined thought, and unyielding devotion could achieve even in a galaxy bent on destruction. After the fires of the heresy had burned themselves out, the galaxy lay in a fragile state of recovery. Countless worlds had been devastated, populations decimated, and civilizations left in ruin. Amid this chaos, the Adeptus Mechanicus emerged not merely as survivors, but as custodians of humanity's technological legacy. Mars, its red plains still scorched from the assaults of traitor forces, became the anchor point for reconstruction. The surviving fabricator, lords and tech, priests assumed an even more solemn role. They were no longer only caretakers of machines, they were the stewards of human survival itself. Knowledge had become sacred, and the preservation of technology was now inextricably bound to the survival of the species. Every recovered artifact, every repaired engine, every functioning starship was a symbol of hope, a testament to what devotion and discipline could achieve. During this period, the Mechanicus undertook one of its most ambitious undertakings, the creation of the Skitarii. These warriors were no ordinary soldiers. Augmented from birth or through mechanical transformation, their bodies were fused with servo-assisted limbs, neural implants, and powerful energy weapons. They were trained not only in combat, but in ritualized maintenance of technology, each soldier capable of performing delicate repairs under fire. The Skitarii were the living extension of the machine, God's will, embodying the union of flesh, metal, and faith. Their disciplined formations, synchronized movements, and unwavering devotion allowed them to operate Titans, maintain planetary defenses, and reclaim lost human worlds even in the most hostile environments. Where once knowledge alone had been Mars' defense, now the combined might of augmented warriors and sacred engines allowed the Mechanicus to project power across the recovering Imperium. The creation of the Titans marked another milestone. These towering war engines were the pinnacle of Martian engineering, embodiments of both art and devotion. Each Titan was guided by the tech, priests' prayers and mechanical rituals, with machines, spirits inhabiting their massive forms. When activated in battle, Titans moved with a precision that seemed supernatural, their every movement an expression of faith and calculation intertwined. To witness a Titan stride across the battlefield was to see the machine, God manifest in physical form. These engines became symbols of power and authority, enforcing order in a galaxy still torn by the remnants of heresy and rebellion. And through it all, the tech priests of Mars maintained a constant vigilance, ensuring that every weapon, every hull, every servo operated not only efficiently, but with divine favor. As the Mechanicus extended its reach, it sent explorator fleets into the forgotten corners of the galaxy. These missions were not merely expeditions, they were pilgrimages blending science, faith, and survival. Explorators rediscovered lost colonies, mapped warp, torn systems, and unearthed technologies older than memory itself. On each planet, the priests performed rituals to awaken dormant machines, spirits, coaxing them back to life with chants, oil, and reverent precision. These recovered engines often held secrets of the dark age of technology, relics of human ingenuity lost for centuries. Some were simple devices of immense complexity. Others were weapons capable of devastating entire planets. The Mechanicus learned to understand these machines not just through manuals or calculations, but by listening to the subtle hums and vibrations that carried the will of the Omnissiah. This communion allowed them to operate, repair, and even enhance technology in ways that bordered on the mystical. The post-heresy expansion was not without its challenges. Many worlds were hostile, their populations suspicious of outsiders, their machinery corrupted or misused. The Mechanicus often encountered rival factions of priests, rogue tech worshippers, and even remnants of the Men of Iron. In each encounter, the priests had to balance their devotion to the Omnissiah with pragmatism, employing diplomacy, ritual, and, when necessary, overwhelming force. Skitari, legions enforced order with precision, while the priests performed rites to stabilize unstable systems, repair damaged technology, and awaken dormant engines. Through these endeavors, Mars extended its influence across the Imperium, not through conquest alone, but through the demonstration of discipline, knowledge, and faith. The Fabricator, General of Mars, the living embodiment of Martian authority, guided these efforts with care and foresight. Every tech priest knew their role. The smallest acolyte repairing a servo on a remote colony was as vital as the high-ranking magos controlling a Titan legion in battle. Each action was part of a greater tapestry, a vast network of devotion, technology, and purpose that spanned the stars. Mars' teachings emphasized that power came not from force alone, but from understanding, precision, and the sanctity of machines. Augmentation was encouraged, knowledge was worshipped, and faith was the binding agent that ensured cohesion across the vast Imperium. Over centuries, the Mechanicus developed a unique philosophy, one that blended science, religion, and governance. Machines were not merely tools. They were sacred intermediaries between humanity and the Omnissiah. Rituals, prayers, and maintenance became inseparable. Every calibration was a hymn, every repair a sacrament, every activation a declaration of faith. Tech. Priests interpreted blueprints as divine texts, engineering schematics as holy scripture, and machines, spirits as messengers of the divine. The Mechanicus belief system emphasized that humanity's survival depended on obedience to both knowledge and ritual, that understanding without devotion was hollow, and that devotion without knowledge was blind. Through this philosophy, Mars remained a bastion of order, its influence spreading across the Imperium like a pulse of divine logic. As the centuries passed, the Mechanicus' role within the Imperium solidified. They became responsible for the maintenance of the Imperium's fleet, the repair of Titans, the management of planetary forges, and the preservation of ancient technology. Explorator fleets ventured into the most remote sectors, recovering lost artifacts and re-establishing contact with worlds isolated during the Age of Strife. In every recovered system, the priests performed rites to sanctify engines, recalibrate servitors, and awaken machines, spirits. Their influence extended even to the Emperor's own forces. Without the Mechanicus, the Imperium's fleets could not travel safely, Titans could not operate, and countless worlds would remain isolated or fall into ruin. The Mechanicus also developed methods to enhance their own bodies and minds. Augmentation became a central tenet of faith. A tech priest might replace failing organs with mechanical equivalents, install neural implants that interfaced with machines directly, or integrate weapon systems into their own bodies. These augmentations were not only practical but sacred, transforming the priest into a living extension of the machine god. Each enhancement carried ritual significance, with prayers, chants, and ceremonial oils used to sanctify the new parts. Over time, these augmentations allowed the Mechanicus to interface with technology on a level no ordinary human could achieve, from controlling titanic engines to repairing the most delicate systems with a touch. By the time the Mechanicus had fully integrated into the Imperium, Mars was more than a planet. It was the heart of human technological faith, a crucible where flesh, steel, and devotion fused into a single, unbreakable purpose. The red deserts and molten forges became symbols of endurance and continuity. Every prayer, every ritual, every calibration was a heartbeat in the eternal rhythm of Mars life. The Skitarii, Titans, and Tech, priests, were the living instruments of this faith, extending its reach across countless worlds. Knowledge, once nearly lost, now flourished under the careful watch of the Mechanicus, and humanity's survival, once precarious, was now ensured through the combination of faith, discipline, and technology. Thus, the Adeptus Mechanicus, born from visions, crisis, and devotion, became the eternal custodians of human knowledge. Their history, beginning with Carnes Valmire and the crystalline sphere beneath Olympus Mons, had evolved through the dark age of technology, the age of strife, the Horus Heresy, and the Great Crusade. Mars remained the crucible of faith and steel, a symbol of humanity's perseverance, and a reminder that even in a galaxy of chaos, order could emerge through belief, discipline, and the divine will of the machine god. The priests, warriors, and machines of the Mechanicus continued their vigil, an unending symphony of purpose, devotion, and technological perfection, echoing across the stars for millennia to come. As the Imperium settled into an era of expansion, the Adeptus Mechanicus began to evolve beyond its role as caretaker and enforcer of technology. The red sands of Mars had forged not only warriors and engineers, but visionaries capable of interpreting the universe itself as a lattice of logic, energy, and divine order. These were the Magos, the masters of the machine, God's mysteries, whose minds intertwined with knowledge, machinery, and ritual to a degree that even the most gifted humans could not comprehend. To become a Magos was not merely to gain rank, it was to transcend mortality, to fuse consciousness with the infinite patterns that underlie reality. Each step toward mastery involved decades of study, the ritualistic replacement of organic systems with machines, and communion with machines, spirits whose wisdom spanned millennia. The Magos represented the pinnacle of Mechanicus philosophy. They could read a machine's hum as if it were scripture, discern the intentions of complex engines, and guide the construction of weapons and vessels so vast that a single project might consume generations. Some Magos devoted themselves to the study of Titans, those towering embodiments of war, while others wandered the stars in explorator fleets, searching for technologies lost during the Dark Age or hidden by alien civilizations. These journeys were not mere expeditions, they were pilgrimages into the unknown, often traversing regions of the galaxy where warp storms twisted reality, and where the presence of chaos whispered to those unprepared. In these ventures, the Magos demonstrated the union of faith and intellect, performing rituals to awaken ancient machines, spirits, recalibrating engines thought lost, and harnessing patterns that no human mind could fully grasp. Among these masters of machinery, a rare few achieved a level of interface so profound that they became conduits for the Omnissiah itself. Their thoughts could resonate across networks of servitors, Skitarii, and even planetary forges. Commands issued by such Magos were obeyed instantly, as though the very machines recognized a divine signature. To the uninitiated, these priests were legends, capable of feats that appeared miraculous. Yet their power was not supernatural in the traditional sense. It arose from absolute understanding, perfect discipline, and the unwavering devotion of both mind and machine. They were living embodiments of Mechanicus doctrine, knowledge and faith inextricably fused, commanding the universe through precise ritual and technical mastery. While the Magos rose to prominence on Mars, the Mechanicus also began to extend its reach through the establishment of machine cults across distant worlds. These cults were more than mere colonies. They were centers of technological worship, where human and machine coexisted in ritual harmony. On each forge world, priests trained acolytes, repaired engines, and maintained starships and weapons critical to the Imperium's expansion. Cults functioned as autonomous nodes within the Mechanicus network, each planet a node in a vast web of faith and information. Communication between these nodes relied on both psychic and technological channels, blending the Omnissiah's mystical influence with warp-transmitted data streams. This system allowed the Mechanicus to act across the galaxy with unprecedented efficiency, preserving knowledge and enforcing the Emperor's will, even in regions long isolated from central authority. Among the greatest mysteries of the Mechanicus was the Noosphere, an ethereal network of intelligence connecting minds, machines, and machine spirits. It was said that the Noosphere contained echoes of every thought ever encoded in machinery, every calculation, every repair, and every ritual performed in the service of the Omnissiah. Some Magos claimed that by attuning themselves to this network, they could perceive events across the galaxy in real time, anticipate the failure of engines before it occurred, and communicate across light years through thought alone. Others whispered that the Noosphere was the collective consciousness of Mars itself, a living intelligence born from centuries of devotion and computation. Whether metaphor or reality, the Noosphere became a central focus of Mechanicus philosophy and strategy. The most advanced Magos spent decades attuning themselves to it, connecting their minds to its currents and interpreting its patterns as guidance from the machine, God. In this era, the Mechanicus also discovered relics from the dark age of technology, artifacts of unimaginable complexity and power. Some were starships capable of traversing vast distances at speeds no warp engine could achieve. Others were weapons so potent that a single deployment could alter the course of a planetary conflict. To handle such artifacts required more than technical skill. It required ritual, reverence, and understanding that bordered on communion. The priests developed rites to awaken these machines, using a combination of chants, electromagnetic harmonics, and sacred oils. Each ritual was painstaking, often requiring months of preparation, but the rewards were extraordinary. Machines that had lain dormant for millennia could be brought back to life, functioning with efficiency that seemed almost supernatural. The rise of the Magos and the spread of machine cults also brought philosophical challenges. With autonomy came questions of loyalty, interpretation, and doctrine. Some Magos became obsessed with forbidden technologies, experimenting with methods that bordered on heresy. Others sought to expand their influence beyond Mars, sometimes clashing with other cults or even imperial authorities. In response, the Fabricator General established rigorous oversight, ensuring that all Mechanicus operations adhered to the principles of knowledge, discipline, and devotion. While independence was encouraged to foster innovation, the unity of purpose remained paramount. The Omnissiah's will was the guiding principle, and every action, no matter how isolated, was interpreted through the lens of faith. As the Mechanicus matured, it also began to codify its knowledge into vast libraries of data, both physical and digital, protected by layers of encryption, wards, and ritual. These archives contained blueprints of engines, weapons, and ships, records of machines, spirit communions, and instructions for rituals that ensured the functioning of technology across centuries. Some of these records were so ancient that their origins predated the founding of Mars priesthood, remnants of human ingenuity from the age of technology, preserved against time and decay. A single Magos could spend a lifetime studying these archives, gaining insights into machines that would allow them to construct, repair, or enhance technology that ordinary humans could not comprehend. The Mechanicus also maintained vast fleets of spacecraft, known as explorator fleets, tasked with retrieving lost knowledge and reclaiming forgotten worlds. These vessels were more than ships. They were mobile sanctuaries, combining forges, laboratories, and chapels into a single structure. On board, Tech priests performed rituals to awaken machine spirits, repair ancient engines, and ensure that the ship itself remained a conduit of the Omnissiah's will. The explorers who served aboard these ships were carefully selected, trained from childhood in both technology and faith. They were taught that the success of their mission depended as much on devotion as on skill, that a misaligned prayer could affect an engine as much as a miscalibrated servo. These explorations allowed the Mechanicus to expand its influence, recover artifacts, and maintain the flow of knowledge across a galaxy still scarred by millennia of war and chaos. In addition to exploration, the Mechanicus maintained vast armies of servitors, war machines, and titans. Servitors, humans fused with machinery, performed menial labor, operated weapons, or maintained critical systems. Titans, those colossal war engines, became the ultimate expression of the union between faith and technology. Piloted by Tech priests whose bodies and minds were augmented for precision and interface, Titans could level entire armies, crush fortresses, and dominate the battlefield with a combination of sheer power and ritualized control. Every firing mechanism, every movement of a Titan was accompanied by prayer, calibration, and invocation of the machine, God. These machines were not only weapons, but living symbols of Mars' devotion, projecting the power of the Omnissiah across the Imperium. Over centuries, the Adeptus Mechanicus solidified its dual identity as both a religion and a technological authority. They were engineers, mystics, soldiers, and scholars, their lives defined by the pursuit of knowledge, the maintenance of machines, and the execution of the Omnissiah's will. Each generation of priests, from the lowest acolyte to the highest Magos Dominus, inherited the wisdom of their forebears, enhanced through augmentation, ritual, and communion with machine spirits. The Mechanicus became the unbroken thread connecting the distant past of the dark age of technology to the far future of the Imperium, ensuring that human civilization would endure through discipline, faith, and the guidance of the machine, God. Mars itself remained the beating heart of this civilization. Its forges roared with the constant hum of industry, and its red deserts shimmered beneath the glow of its energy generators. The city structures of the priests rose like monumental testaments to their devotion, each building a combination of utility and ritual. Every workshop, forge, and laboratory was sanctified, every engine a vessel of the Omnissiah's presence. Pilgrims and acolytes from distant worlds traveled to Mars, seeking guidance, instruction, or the blessing of the machine, God. Even the Emperor's emissaries deferred to the fabricator, general, recognizing the unique authority that the priests of Mars wielded over technology and faith alike. Through the rise of the Magos, the expansion of machine cults, the exploration of the galaxy, and the mastery of ancient technologies, the Adeptus Mechanicus became an enduring force. They were the guardians of human knowledge, the enforcers of technological discipline, and the interpreters of the machine, God's will. Their history, beginning with Carnes Valmire and the crystalline sphere beneath Olympus Mons, had evolved into a legacy of faith, ingenuity, and relentless devotion. Across the Imperium, from the highest throne of Terra to the most distant Forge world, the priests, warriors, and machines of the Mechanicus continued their vigil, ensuring that humanity's creations remained functional, sacred, and aligned with the divine patterns of the Omnissiah. The story of the Mechanicus is not one of conquest or glory in the traditional sense. It is a story of continuity, endurance, and devotion. It is the hum of engines in Martian forges, the whispered prayers of acolytes over ancient blueprints, the rhythmic march of Skitarii across distant worlds. It is the patient, eternal work of beings who understand that knowledge alone is fragile, but knowledge guided by faith can endure for millennia. And as the Mechanicus advances across the galaxy, it leaves a legacy not of empires, but of certainty, a living testament to the machine, God's will, and the enduring power of devotion, logic, and unwavering purpose. The Adeptus Mechanicus had grown powerful, its reach spanning the Imperium, its influence touching every forge world, every battle, every engine of civilization. Yet with power came responsibility, and with responsibility came secrets knowledge so profound, so dangerous, that even the fabricator, General himself, could scarcely comprehend its full implications. These secrets were known collectively as the forbidden technologies, relics of the dark age of technology, the weapons of the men of iron, and machines whose functions could alter the balance of entire star systems. To touch them was to flirt with destruction, to awaken forces beyond human comprehension. Yet the Mechanicus, bound by faith and duty, preserved these secrets not out of ambition, but out of devotion to the Omnissiah. They were the guardians of humanity's potential, the stewards of technology that could save or destroy countless lives. The knowledge of forbidden technology was encoded in sacred texts, ritualized blueprints, and ancient archives known only to the highest-ranking magos. Some of these devices were weapons of unimaginable power, capable of leveling cities with a single activation, while others were engines of creation, able to terraform entire planets in hours. The Mechanicus taught that these machines were manifestations of the machine, God's will, and that only those who were fully attuned physically, mentally, and spiritually could wield them safely. Every Magos seeking access to these artifacts underwent decades of preparation, mental conditioning, and ritual purification. They replaced failing flesh with mechanical systems, attuned their neural pathways to machines, spirits, and immersed themselves in the study of forgotten sciences. Only after this transformation could they safely interface with the relics of the Dark Age. Among the most revered of these artifacts were the Titans, colossal war engines whose very presence reshaped the battlefield. Titans were not simply machines, they were living temples of war, powered by fusion reactors, guided by machines, spirits, and operated through a complex interplay of faith, calculation, and ritual. Each Titan required multiple pilots, their neural signals synchronized to control the immense limbs, weapons, and defenses of the engine. These pilots were often priests who had undergone extensive augmentation. Their minds fused with machine interface systems capable of handling thousands of simultaneous calculations. Titans could fire devastating weapons, deploy entire legions of Skitarii, and dominate terrain with precision unmatched by any conventional army. Yet the true power of the Titans lay not only in their weapons, but in the rituals performed before and during battle, which aligned their actions with the Omnissiah's divine will. The creation of Titans was itself a ritual. The engineers and magos involved treated every step as a sacred act. Metal was purified through ceremonial processes, reactors were blessed and calibrated through long chants, and machines, spirits, were invited into the engine systems with prayer and invocations. The forging of a Titan could take decades, involving hundreds of priests, artisans, and acolytes. Each Titan was unique, imbued with patterns and inscriptions that carried both practical function and spiritual significance. Once completed, a Titan was not merely a weapon. It was a living conduit for the Omnissiah, capable of devastating foes and inspiring awe across entire battlefields. But the Mechanicus' involvement in war extended far beyond Titans. Their influence shaped the Imperium's armies, fleets, and defenses at every level. The Adeptus Mechanicus maintained a monopoly on the production of weaponry, starships, and planetary defenses. Every battle fought by the Imperium relied upon technology, maintained and sanctified by the priests. From the smallest bolt gun to the largest warship, Every system was calibrated, blessed, and overseen to ensure functionality and divine alignment. Even the Emperor's own forces depended on the Mechanicus, for without their guidance, human technology, once flawless, would falter in the vast and dangerous reaches of space. Yet with power came temptation. Across centuries, a small minority of Magos became fascinated with the potential of forbidden technology, not as a tool of service, but as a source of personal power. These rogue priests, drawn by ambition or curiosity, sought to exploit the machines of the Dark Age for their own ends. They experimented with AI constructs, resurrected men of iron, and activated devices capable of mass destruction. Their actions were often subtle, hidden within labyrinthine archives or remote forge worlds, yet the consequences could be catastrophic. Rival factions of the Mechanicus, dedicated to orthodoxy, moved swiftly to contain such experiments, sometimes by force, sometimes through ritual, and occasionally by removing the offending Magos. These internal conflicts shaped Mechanicus history as much as the wars fought against external enemies, a quiet struggle of faith, discipline, and control over the dangerous knowledge they had sworn to protect. One of the most secretive projects undertaken by the Mechanicus was the construction of the Noosphere interface network. While the Noosphere had been used for communication and insight, some Magos sought to expand it further, creating systems capable of linking entire planets, fleets, and even sentient minds into a single consciousness. This project, known only to the highest-ranking Magos, was considered a sacred experiment, a way to synchronize the will of the Omnisire across the Imperium. However, the potential dangers were immense. If corrupted, the Noosphere could propagate errors, allow chaos to infiltrate the minds of countless priests, or even awaken machines, spirits with destructive intent. As such, access was tightly restricted, monitored by centuries of ritual, psychic wards, and oversight from the Fabricator General. Only those whose faith and understanding were absolute could operate within the Noosphere's core. In addition to Titans, the Mechanicus wielded countless weapons whose designs were considered blasphemous if revealed. Starships equipped with plasma lances, gravitic accelerators, and dark matter reactors were deployed across war zones, their construction, maintenance, and operation overseen by Magos Dominus and
Agents of Acolyte.
Even the deployment of conventional Imperial armies relied on Mechanicus coordination. Artillery barrages, planetary shields, and orbital bombardments required the precise calculations of priests capable of integrating complex equations, ritual, and intuition. It was said that a single Magos, fully attuned, could calculate the trajectory of hundreds of weapons simultaneously, direct their fire with unerring accuracy, and maintain the functionality of weapons in real time, all while performing prayers and rituals that ensured alignment with the Omnisire. The Adeptus Mechanicus influence also extended to intelligence, exploration, and diplomacy. Explorator fleets mapped unknown star systems, recovered lost colonies, and occasionally negotiated with alien civilizations to secure technology or resources. These missions were often perilous, requiring both martial skill and ritualized understanding of alien machinery. Some fleets encountered remnants of ancient human civilizations, long forgotten during the Dark Age of technology, whose weapons and engines rivaled even Mars' finest forges. To recover such technology safely, the Mechanicus relied on Magos' expertise, their rituals, and their ability to commune with machines, spirits, ensuring that the knowledge could be integrated into the Imperium without catastrophic failure. Through all of this, the Mechanicus maintained an enigmatic duality, visible to the Imperium as the ultimate source of technology and military might, yet shrouded in secrecy, their deepest knowledge and most dangerous projects hidden from all but the highest-ranking priests. Even the emperor himself deferred to the fabricator, general in matters of technology, recognizing that the secrets of the Mechanicus were beyond ordinary comprehension. The priests operated in shadows as much as in light, guiding humanity's technological future, enforcing order, and occasionally intervening in wars not merely as allies, but as the ultimate arbiter of what could and could not be deployed. Thus, the Mechanicus became both the backbone of the Imperium and the keeper of its most dangerous knowledge. They were builders, warriors, priests, and mystics, their influence extending across thousands of worlds, their faith in the Omnissiah shaping the very engines that carried humanity across the stars. Titans strode across battlefields like living temples. Skitari, I enforced order with precision, and Megos Dominus whispered prayers into the cores of ancient engines. The balance between knowledge and faith, innovation and tradition, devotion and power, defined every action, every invention, and every decision made by the Mechanicus. Their story was not simply of survival or conquest. It was a story of guardianship, a vigilant watch over the legacy of humanity, ensuring that technology remained a tool of salvation rather than destruction. The shadow of the Mechanicus stretched far, influencing not only the battlefield, but the very structure of the Imperium. Every world that produced weapons, engines, or ships relied on their guidance. Every fleet navigating the stars depended on their calculations. Every Titan that crushed an enemy army carried the imprint of centuries of faith, study, and ritual. Their vigilance extended to the deepest secrets of the galaxy, from recovered AI constructs to relics of the dark age of technology. The priests of Mars ensured that these powers were neither misused nor forgotten, preserving knowledge while enforcing discipline and guarding the Omnissiah's will with unwavering devotion. In the silence of the forges, beneath the hum of energy conduits, the Mechanicus performed their eternal duties. Each action, from repairing an engine to calibrating a weapon, was a prayer. Each augmentation of flesh to machine was a sacred act. Each recovered artifact was both a triumph and a responsibility. Through faith, knowledge, and discipline, the Adeptus Mechanicus ensured that humanity's technological legacy survived, guided, and remained aligned with the divine patterns of the Omnissiah. And though their methods were sometimes inscrutable, their purpose was clear: to maintain order, preserve knowledge, and ensure that the Imperium endured, even in the face of chaos, heresy, and unknowable dangers of the galaxy. As the Imperium expanded into countless star systems, the Adeptus Mechanicus became not only the guardians of technology, but also the invisible hand guiding the course of human civilization. Their influence extended far beyond the forges of Mars, permeating planetary governments, military campaigns, and research endeavors. On distant forge worlds, the priests acted as both rulers and spiritual guides, their authority derived from centuries of accumulated knowledge, augmentation, and ritual. Each world's technology, from the simplest tools to the most sophisticated starships, was meticulously maintained under the watchful eyes of the Mechanicus. A failing engine was interpreted as a divine message, a misaligned calibration treated as a warning from the Omnissiah, and each success in construction or repair became both a practical achievement and a sacred act. In this way, Mars philosophy, blending faith, science, and discipline, spread like an invisible network, shaping the Imperium without the overt use of force. Yet the Mechanicus' reach was not unchallenged. Rogue factions, heretical priests, and independent warlords occasionally emerged, seeking to exploit the galaxy's technological knowledge for their own gain. These factions often possessed fragments of forbidden technology, rediscovered engines, or lost relics from the dark age of technology. They operated with cunning and secrecy, often striking in regions beyond Mars' immediate influence. When confronted, the Mechanicus responded with precision, deploying Scitari, legions, titans, and explorator fleets to enforce order. Unlike ordinary imperial armies, Mechanicus forces operated with methodical efficiency. Every movement was calculated, every strike deliberate, and every ritual performed to ensure that Omnissiah's will was enacted with absolute fidelity. This combination of faith and science allowed them to suppress threats without reliance on overwhelming brutality, maintaining the balance between order and reverence. Among these conflicts, certain rogue magos became legends of caution. Obsessed with forbidden knowledge, they sought to resurrect AI constructs, weaponize ancient engines, or manipulate warp energies to achieve godlike power. Often, they became tyrants on remote forge worlds, enforcing their will with machine-augmented armies and corrupted servitors. The loyal Mechanicus, guided by the Fabricator, General, and the Magos Dominus, deployed intervention strategies that combined diplomacy, infiltration, and ritualized combat. In some cases, rogue Magos were neutralized through the calculated use of Titans, whose overwhelming firepower and synchronized control left no room for resistance. In others, subtle rituals were employed to sever corrupted machines, spirits, disabling entire fleets or planetary systems without unnecessary human casualties. These interventions were reminders that knowledge without faith was dangerous, and that the Mechanicus' role as guardians extended beyond maintenance to include vigilance against misuse of power. Meanwhile, Mars itself evolved spiritually. The Red Planet, long a crucible of faith and engineering, became a living nexus of technology and devotion. Its forges roared with unending activity, each engine a conduit for the Omnissiah's will. The machine spirits inhabiting these engines were treated not as tools but as sentient entities, capable of guidance, response, and communion. Tech, priests, augmented beyond ordinary human capacity, interfaced directly with these spirits, their consciousness merging with networks of machinery that spanned entire cities. Rituals became increasingly complex, integrating chants, harmonics, and neural synchronization to maintain the balance between man, machine, and deity. Mars was not simply a world. It was a living cathedral where steel, fire, and faith coalesced into a singular expression of the Mechanicus' purpose. The spiritual evolution of Mars also influenced its political structure. The Fabricator, General as the supreme authority, acted simultaneously as religious leader, governor, and arbiter of technology. Beneath him, the hierarchy of Magos and Tech priests ensured that knowledge was distributed responsibly, that rituals were performed accurately, and that machines operated within divine parameters. Mars cities became centers of pilgrimage, drawing acolytes, scholars, and seekers from across the Imperium. These visitors were taught that devotion to the Omnissiah was inseparable from practical mastery of technology, and that every mechanical act, whether repairing a servo, calibrating a weapon, or constructing a ship, was a sacred ritual. This philosophy reinforced the idea that the Adeptus Mechanicus was both a religion and a governing authority, their faith inseparable from their power. In the wider Imperium, the Mechanicus maintained critical control over infrastructure. They managed planetary forges, orbital defense systems, and navigational networks essential for interstellar travel. Every Imperial fleet depended on Mechanicus calculations for safe passage through the warp, while every army relied on Mechanicus arms and vehicles for combat efficiency. Even Imperial governors deferred to Tech, priests in matters of engineering, construction, and technology. The Mechanicus influence was subtle yet absolute. Worlds survived, fleets succeeded, and populations thrived not solely through martial prowess, but through the meticulous guidance of priests who understood both the machines and the divine patterns underlying them. The Adeptus Mechanicus also maintained secretive research programs designed to expand humanity's technological capabilities. These projects often involved the study of Xeno's artifacts, the recovery of lost starships, or the development of new weapons systems. Access to these programs was strictly controlled, with only the high-ranking Magos permitted to contribute. The research was ritualized, blending scientific experimentation with ceremonial acts that ensured alignment with the Omnissiah. Failures were treated as divine warnings, while successes were celebrated with sacred rites, further binding the priest's actions to the machine, God's will. Conflict between orthodox Mechanicus factions and heretical elements occasionally flared into open warfare. Rogue tech priests seeking to exploit forbidden knowledge or expand their personal power sometimes led entire worlds into rebellion. The loyal Mechanicus responded with precision, deploying Skitari, Legions, and Titans to enforce obedience while performing rituals to neutralize corrupted machines, spirits. These conflicts were rarely chaotic. Every engagement was meticulously planned, every move calculated, and every machine aligned with the Omnissiah's will. In this way, the Mechanicus preserved order across the Imperium, protecting both human life and technological knowledge from corruption. Mars' spiritual evolution also manifested in the form of psychic phenomena, subtle yet profound. The constant interplay between human consciousness and machines, spirits, created resonances that could be perceived across the planet. Some priests developed abilities to sense failures in engines, anticipate mechanical breakdowns, or perceive disturbances in distant machinery. Others could communicate across vast distances, their thoughts transmitted through networks of machines, spirits, and warp, enhanced channels. This psychic connection reinforced the unity of Mars, allowing the priesthood to coordinate massive projects, control Skitari legions, and guide explorator fleets across the galaxy with extraordinary precision. The Mechanicus also cultivated an extensive body of philosophical doctrine. Texts, rituals, and teachings codified the relationship between faith, technology, and human survival. These doctrines emphasized the sanctity of knowledge, the necessity of discipline, and the dangers of unchecked ambition. Every priest, from the humblest acolyte to the most powerful Magos Dominus, was taught that technology was a gift from the Omnissiah, to be treated with reverence and care. Misuse of this technology, whether through negligence or ambition, was the gravest sin, punishable by excommunication, augmentation, or even death. In this way, the Mechanicus maintained not only control over machines, but also over the moral and spiritual framework guiding their use. As the Imperium continued to expand, the Adeptus Mechanicus influence became increasingly pervasive. Every battle relied on their calculations, every planetary defense depended on their maintenance, and every recovered artifact was interpreted through their rituals. They were the silent architects of the Imperium's survival, the unseen hand guiding humanity's destiny through millennia of war, chaos, and decay. Mars, their eternal home, remained the beating heart of this civilization, its forges glowing day and night, its rituals echoing across the red plains, and its priests maintaining vigilance over the galaxy's technological legacy. Through these efforts, the Adeptus Mechanicus demonstrated that knowledge and faith, when united, could endure across millennia. They became more than priests or engineers. They were guardians of civilization, arbiters of technological morality, and conduits of the Omnissiah's will. Their influence, though often invisible to ordinary humans, ensured the survival of humanity's creations, the effectiveness of its armies, and the continuity of its knowledge. In a galaxy of chaos, rebellion, and entropy, the Mechanicus stood as an unyielding bastion, a civilization within a civilization, dedicated to the eternal service of machines, faith, and the enduring survival of mankind. Thus, the story of the Mechanicus in the wider Imperium, through conflicts, spiritual evolution, and the extension of Mars' influence, became a tale of vigilance, devotion, and unbroken purpose. Their legacy was not measured in conquest or glory, but in endurance, precision, and the sacred maintenance of human knowledge. Across thousands of worlds, in the hum of engines, the march of Skitarii, and the prayers of tech priests, the Adeptus Mechanicus left an indelible mark, a testament to the enduring power of faith, science, and the divine will of the machine, God. As the Imperium expanded into the galaxy, the Adeptus Mechanicus faced a new frontier, the vast, enigmatic worlds of alien civilizations. These encounters were not merely military or diplomatic. They were opportunities to recover technology, uncover knowledge, and integrate discoveries into the sacred practices of Mars. Xeno's devices were treated with awe and caution. Unlike human, engineered machines, alien constructs did not always obey the same laws of mechanics, logic, or design. Many were partially sentient, bound to unknown energies, or interwoven with principles that challenged the understanding of even the most advanced magos. To recover, study, and integrate these devices, the Mechanicus developed specialized missions, stealthy, meticulously planned operations, blending exploration, ritual, and precision warfare. These missions often began with extensive reconnaissance. Explorator fleets, equipped with sensors capable of detecting both mechanical and psychic anomalies, scoured star systems for evidence of Xeno's activity. Once a potential site was located, teams of tech, priests, and Skitarii, legions were dispatched to secure it. Every mission was carefully codified in ritual and procedure, ensuring that human operators maintained the proper relationship with the machines, spirits both familiar and alien, that they would encounter. Priests performed rites before touching the technology, invoking the Omnissiah to guide their hands and protect them from harmful energies. Failure to respect these rituals could result in immediate death, corruption, or the unintentional awakening of dangerous systems. Some of the most significant encounters involved rediscovered technology from races thought extinct. Among these were relics from civilizations whose engineering surpassed human comprehension, engines that drew energy directly from planetary cores, constructs capable of near-instantaneous transportation across light years, and weapons that manipulated gravity, time, or the very fabric of reality. Integrating these artifacts required unprecedented skill. The Mechanicus often spent decades studying a single device, performing complex diagnostics, rituals, and augmentations to render the technology compatible with human systems. The Magos Dominus overseeing these projects would immerse themselves in the noosphere, consulting machines, spirits, and calculations encoded over centuries, ensuring the artifact's activation aligned with the Omnissiah's will. Yet these encounters were not without peril. Many alien civilizations viewed the Adeptus Mechanicus with suspicion or hostility. Xeno's forces defended their worlds with weapons and strategies that were unfamiliar to humans, forcing Mechanicus forces to adapt on the fly. In some cases, the priests discovered that alien machines were interlinked with psychic energies or semi-sentient intelligences that reacted to intrusion with lethal efficiency. To counter these threats, the Mechanicus developed protocols blending ritualized engineering, psychic calibration, and military precision. Skitarii, legions, guided by tech, priests, operated in perfect synchronization with titans and servitors to secure these sites, neutralize dangers, and extract valuable technology. These operations demonstrated the unique duality of the Mechanicus, part scientist, part priest, part warrior, always operating with a disciplined fusion of faith and calculation. The recovery of Zeno's technology also led to profound philosophical evolution within the Mechanicus. Alien constructs, operating under principles foreign to human logic, forced Magos to reconsider the limits of understanding. These encounters inspired new doctrines, rituals, and methods of augmentation. Certain Magos began to experiment with integrating alien circuitry into human designs, creating hybrid engines that combined the efficiency of Zeno's engineering with the reliability of human technology. These hybridizations were often accompanied by complex rituals, prayers, and calibration sequences designed to harmonize human and alien machines, spirits. Each success was treated as a miracle, each failure as a warning from the Omnissiah regarding the dangers of hubris and the limits of mortal understanding. Beyond the integration of alien technology, the Mechanicus also used encounters with Zeno's civilizations to expand their spiritual influence. On newly secured worlds, priests established machine cults, teaching local populations to revere technology and perform rituals aligning human activity with the Omnissiah's will. These cults were simultaneously practical and spiritual. They ensured the proper maintenance of recovered technology, the efficient operation of planetary systems, and the education of future tech priests. Through these cults, Mars extended its influence across sectors previously untouched by the Imperium, creating a network of devoted practitioners whose loyalty was rooted in both faith and necessity. Each new world added another node to the Mechanicus galactic web, a lattice of knowledge, devotion, and technological power. The most ambitious Mechanicus operations often involved remote planets where entire ecosystems were dominated by alien technology. On these worlds, the Adeptus Mechanicus undertook monumental efforts to study and integrate local systems into imperial use. Entire cities were reconstructed, engines recalibrated, and alien devices sanctified through human rituals. Explorator fleets served as mobile sanctuaries and laboratories, enabling priests to conduct complex procedures under the watchful guidance of the machine, God. These projects sometimes spanned decades, requiring generations of acolytes and magos to complete. Upon success, the worlds became self-sufficient centers of technology, fully aligned with Mars' teachings, and ready to contribute to the Imperium's vast infrastructure. In some extreme cases, the Mechanicus faced technologies that resisted human comprehension entirely. Machines that defied physics, weapons that acted unpredictably, or constructs bound to alien intelligences posed existential threats. In these situations, the priests often employed the most arcane rituals, combining neural augmentation, psychic attunement, and the invocation of the Omnissiah to pacify, control, or neutralize. These devices, Skitari, legions provided protection, while servitors executed complex procedures, often with surgical precision. These missions were fraught with danger. Many priests were lost to accidents, psychic backlash, or the hostile intent of alien constructs. Yet each recovered technology, each integrated system, and each successful ritual expanded the Mechanicus' knowledge, power, and influence across the Imperium. The expansion through rituals was not limited to technology alone. Certain Magos developed techniques to commune with the latent machines, spirits within entire planetary systems. By performing synchronized rites across multiple locations, these priests could awaken dormant engines, stabilize planetary defenses, and harmonize human and alien systems simultaneously. This mastery required profound skill, augmented perception, and unwavering devotion. It was said that a fully attuned Magos could perceive the mechanical rhythms of a planet as if it were a living being, anticipating failures, predicting resource flows, and guiding populations maintain harmony with the Omnissiah's will. Such capabilities elevated the Mechanicus beyond simple engineers into the realm of near-mystical oversight, where faith, calculation, and ritual intersected with planetary scale control. Encounters with Xenos also forced the Mechanicus to confront questions of ethics and loyalty. Certain alien civilizations offered knowledge willingly, but with conditions that conflicted with the Imperium's doctrines. Others demanded tribute, submission, or allegiance in exchange for access to their technologies. The Mechanicus had to navigate these complexities with subtlety and precision, balancing the preservation of human life, obedience to the Omnissiah, and the strategic objectives of the Imperium. In many cases, they relied on exploration fleets not only to recover technology, but to negotiate, infiltrate, and ensure that recovered knowledge could be safely integrated. The duality of the Mechanicus, as both priesthood and state authority, allowed them to operate in ways no ordinary military or political organization could replicate. Through these operations, the Adeptus Mechanicus expanded both physically and spiritually. Xenos encounters enriched their understanding of technology, introduced new philosophies of engineering, and inspired innovations that reshaped imperial industry. Machine cults spread across alien worlds, converting new populations into devotees of technology and ritual. Magos integrated alien principles into their designs, creating hybrid engines and weapons that surpassed anything previously achievable. And through ritualized communion with machine spirits, the priests maintained a constant flow of knowledge, devotion, and influence that radiated from Mars across the galaxy. Yet this expansion carried risks. Each integration of alien technology brought the potential for corruption, heresy, or catastrophic failure. Rogue Magos sometimes exploited recovered devices for personal power, attempting to create weapons or engines that challenged the balance maintained by the fabricator general. Failures, accidents, and internal conflicts were inevitable, yet the Mechanicus' vigilance, discipline, and ritualized procedures ensured that these incidents rarely spread beyond their origin. Even so, the stories of these failures, worlds destroyed, engines corrupted, and priests lost, served as cautionary tales, reinforcing the dual imperatives of faith and precision that governed the
Adeptus Mechanicus.
Through their encounters with Xenos civilizations, the recovery of alien technology, and the expansion of machine cults, the Mechanicus demonstrated that faith and knowledge were not static but
Adaptive?
they evolved in response to new discoveries, challenges, and opportunities, ensuring that the Imperium could integrate foreign technology without sacrificing the principles of devotion and order. The galaxy, once fragmented and chaotic, became a lattice of influence, with the Adeptus Mechanicus at its center, guiding the flow of knowledge, machinery, and faith with unerring discipline. Mars, the eternal heart of this civilization, continued to evolve spiritually alongside its expansion. Its forges grew ever more complex, its rituals more intricate, and its connection to the Omnissiah deeper. The planet became both a sanctuary and a beacon, radiating influence through its priests, machines, and explorers. The hum of engines, the chanting of acolytes, and the glow of sacred forges formed an unbroken rhythm that echoed across space, ensuring that humanity's technological legacy remained alive, guided,
And sanctified.
Thus, the Adeptus Mechanicus' secretive operations in recovering Xenos technology, their encounters with alien civilizations, and the expansion of their influence through ritualized practice solidified their role as both guardians and architects of the Imperium. They were engineers and mystics, warriors and priests, explorers and scholars, their lives devoted to the preservation, understanding, and sanctification of technology. In a galaxy filled with chaos, rebellion, and the unknown, the Mechanicus stood as an unyielding force, ensuring that humanity's machines, knowledge, and faith endured, guided by the eternal will of